Welcome back to Culture Crossroads. It's time for our Watching the Watchers segment with our friend Valerie Wuertz from Florida Citizens Alliance. Good to see you. Actually, I'll wait a little bit. Let's be nice. We missed you last week. I know both of our schedules, we weren't able to get together to do the segment. But how's everything going so far? You keeping your head above water with all the madness going on?
Staying busy. Staying
Staying
busy. This
busy.
is our time to stay with our boots on the ground, right?
Indeed. Well, Florida Citizens Alliance, as you well know, been warning really for years that it's parents, not bureaucrats, not corporations, and certainly not the federal government that should shape child's education, that should be shaping guardrails and safety around AI. And we're really looking at AI in education, but also just AI in culture, and so much of it being shoved upon us. And now, as Washington is pushing deeper in with AI into schools through executive orders, grant priorities, national task forces, serious questions emerge. Are the states really still in charge? One surprising note: Moms for Liberty. This is a grassroots organization meant to defend the family, defend freedom, defend parental rights, so on and so forth. It looks as though that they are collaborating with the White House AI Education Task Force. Co-founder Tina Descovich addressed that task force, and that the White House says the task force meetings involved private sector leaders, more than 135 pledges to support AI education. The White House pledge page lists major tech companies, including Amazon, Apple, Anthropic, Cisco, among others. You can go down the line. That seems to be an interesting alliance for Moms for Liberty to make. So help us come up to speed. Where are we at here with this?
Well, that's exactly it. I was at a meeting where Tina was a speaker, and this was brought up, and I very frankly asked her, so you signed a pledge with big tech companies and the White House to push policy to support AI and only asking for some transparency. And, there's a big policy that they have pushing on their webpage, and they're doing training classes with their different chapters and encouraging, even incentivizing different chapters to go out and have the conversations with the community, with their school board, and with their legislators about this legislative objective. And when you start opening up the legislative objective, it's only transparency. It really lacks any depth, and it lacks any kind of protections or parental right revisions on it. So one thing that I urged was that we have a parental opt-in. Tina was agreeable about that and said this is something that they also would like to see. But when it comes down to this organization, they are taking orders from the top. They are aligning with big tech companies and with the White House. And parents, we didn't organize that across the country simply to have our decisions about our children's data, learning environments, and digital surveillance negotiated with Washington. This is a bottom-up type of a situation. And seeing this policy, I reviewed it, and I review policies, and I review legislative bills all the time. So I can say from a place of authority that this really lacked any type of meat on their bones. It was all about transparency, but not anything about what happens with the data harvesting and what happens with the ownership of that data, what happens with the bots. Are there any regulations or guardrails up for time, or even protections for the AI bots not to be attached to each student? Nothing about protecting our children. And they are moving this like it is the greatest new parental rights movement. And it really is just an accepting of whatever the big tech companies decide to do.
On the Moms for Liberty Alliance piece, and I'm not making a moral or cultural equivalence to this, but conceptually what's going on. So one thing that I'd be curious about, and I want to get your take on it if you think this is true, because again, as I mentioned at the top of this, it seems an odd alliance for Moms for Liberty to make, because if you're talking about a parental rights grassroots organization, partnering up with an effort that will usurp parental rights we're battling. We're already battling that on enough fronts through our school system. This is another layer of that. But so, for example, I mean, the government has not been afraid to use specific grassroots organizations to try and sell a product or sell an agenda that isn't selling to voters that they need to be okay with it. And I wonder if the government welcoming in a group like Moms for Liberty, well, there are plenty of voters, there are plenty of families that would say, well, if Moms for Liberty is okay with it, then it must be okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of membership.
I'm concerned, are they being set up to be used by the government to push this across? And we're going to find out this task force is going to be something we regret down the road. Do you see any of that at all? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth or speculate on your behalf, but that's, that's what raises my eyebrow.
I won't speculate how high up it goes, but I will talk about the money and chasing the money. When you look at who is on the advisory board of Moms for Liberty, you have Erica Donalds. Erica Donalds' husband, Byron Donalds, is running for governor for the state of Florida. I've had Erica Donalds speak about AI at the Florida Citizens Alliance symposiums, and she was very proactive about having regulations and guardrails put in place from Florida for our education and our students. And then a couple of weeks later, I saw her on CNN having a very opposite conversation. And I was curious, what was the change of heart? And looking in, it's very widely known, and it has been reported on over several different news media outlets, that they received a $5 million incentive donation into their campaign for governor to adopt the AI agenda. So when you see Erica Donalds, again, is on the advisory board of Moms for Liberty, Moms for Liberty has taken a place of promoting a policy and promoting legislation from their website all the way to their membership, then you have to say, somebody is using somebody. We don't typically see parental rights advocate groups align with different government candidates and different government officials. Typically, there's the division in order for us to maintain the integrity of really being a membership-based organization, as well as being membership-based focus. And that's not what we're seeing here. We're seeing this was very much a very meticulous planning to invite the founder of Moms for Liberty in to a task force to promote AI in education. Now, I myself I'm for AI being in education, because I know that we are going to be moving into a direction where kids are going to be using AI whenever they graduate. They're going to be in a place where they have the ability to learn and to really grow in that field, in that department. But what we are seeing is that the AI in education bill and incentive from Erica Donalds' influence possibly is what Moms for Liberty is pushing. So it doesn't sound like it's very much a membership organization anymore.
Wow. Now let's move this forward to maybe the broader and even more pressing concern of the federal government superseding states' rights when it comes to regulating AI. For months now, and on this show we've been covering it for months, maybe the better part of a year, a little more. In the big beautiful bill, they tried to sneak in a provision that states there are a moratorium on states being able to regulate AI for themselves. President Trump has even come out and said, paraphrasing, but that we don't want a bunch of different regulations that's going to make the AI rollout more difficult, et cetera, et cetera. However, again, we're usurping states' rights. We're not paying attention to the needs of the different people around the country. So the White House creates this AI education task force. They bring in educators, they bring in other parents and outside leaders. On paper, that sounds collaborative, but in practice, isn't this really how federal control expands? It's not really through law, but through these task forces and partnerships. And what we're seeing is this soft pressure policy type of framework.
Yes. And actually, we are seeing you don't have to influence an entire organization, just a few people at the top. and they'll do the rest of the work for you. And that's what our government is doing. It's recognizing the power of influence by just having a few relationships, opening up a few doors, and having a few people invited to the White House. And all of a sudden, you have an arm for the government movement rather than for the parent rights movement. And I will say we need to reflect back to the 19th Amendment and remember that we as states are the ones that have the authority. We are the ones that have the power. That was prohibition. The government had no right to come into the states and install prohibition. The states had to come together and agree to give the federal government the authority for prohibition to even take place. And we're seeing that now. The government is not having the states come together to give them the authority. They are just demanding it, and they are inserting themselves as the authority. We as states have a fight against this because we have to stand up and say, we are the authority for education in our state. We are the authority for all things that affect our citizens. This isn't about national security. This is about education. This is about an AI model being rolled out into our children like they are guinea pigs. And look again at the amendments. On the 21st Amendment, we took that power back from the government and we said, you know what? You've had enough time with it. We're going to take it back as states. And you see that we took prohibition and we canceled it in a lot of states. Some states kept having dry counties or even dry states or certain days of the week. That's the authority states have. The government never has the authority to tell the states, you have to wait for us to set up the guardrails. You have to wait for us to decide how to handle this. That is not their place. And it really is an encroachment on our 10th Amendment rights and our separation of powers that we have in the United States.
Let me ask you this. We have a couple of minutes left here. If local districts, though, if they adopt AI because federal grants reward it, which they're going to financially incentivize school districts, national organizations, if they normalize it among different grassroots and community groups and movements, what real power is left then for state lawmakers or even local school boards to say no? And I'll double barrel that question with this. I know that Florida is doing some things to add some safety and guardrails and oversight. Maybe in your answer to that question, you can also let us know what are some things that Florida is doing so that maybe people in other states, if they're wanting to be proactive now and get these guardrails up now, they can be doing that in their state.
You know, that's a great point. And we actually have the architect of a lot of our parental rights movement running for governor. Paul Renner is. He was actually the architect that put a lot of these policies and rules that protect the parental rights movement and preserve the innocence of our children. And one of the bills that he was very instrumental on getting to pass and even making sure that it made it to the governor's desk was putting a provision on social media that kids under age of 13 in the state of Florida are not allowed to have social media. They can't even be on it. Now, without the parents' consent, they can't be on it until at 16, I believe it is. So we have to look at, if we were able to do something like that, why wouldn't we be able to do something in the AI space? Now, for things that are very specific for our states, you have to understand Florida is completely leading this country on parental rights. We are leading it. And right now we have several states that are adopting and even referencing back to our parental rights and our parental rights and education to adopt into their states. One of the things that we do that is unique is we recognize that we should have chaplains in our schools, that chaplains should be part of our mental health in our education. So we adopted a law 2 years ago that says that if the chaplains want to volunteer their time, they can go inside of the schools and provide mental health counseling. We also allow in several of our counties and rolling out soon Bible training during regular school hours for public school students. We're opening up campuses throughout the state where students can take an hour out of their regular scheduled time and have Bible training off campus. We are recognizing that there is a difference between having a biblical worldview and a secular worldview. And if you're looking at public education, it is a very secular model. So we are putting our biblical worldview to be accessible to the students that want it in this state. So, and that's unique. That's very unique. Not every state is going to do that. So you have to be able to say, as a state, we make the laws that are appropriate for our communities.